Hey, witches, how are you? And welcome to the interview with Ms Avi. I'm
Hi,
so excited. She's going to be one of our amazing presenters at the Witches Gathering event November 6th to the 8th, or 6th through the 8th. And I have been following Ms Avi on YouTube for years and years and years. So when she said, "Yeah, I'll do it," I was like, "Oh my God, Miss Amy's gonna be on here." I'm so excited. So I'm a little bit of fangirling. I know my audience is fangirling, so I'm super excited. I'm just in awe that you're gonna be here and sharing your wisdom with the audience of Witches Gathering November 6th through the 8th. So glad you're here. Welcome, Miss Avi.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. It seems like you've got a really, really fascinating lineup. So,
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Originally we wanted to have it in New Orleans, and it was just going to be a small group of my circle, my inner circle witches, and we're going to do all kinds of the New Orleans stuff, but that didn't turn out. So then we were like, you know what, let's just bring it online and let's just open up to all these practitioners and all these people who are really wise in their craft and actually experience what it's like to be with a hoodoo practitioner or a voodoo practitioner, or Santeria or a palmist, and bringing the energy of New Orleans and expand it to other audiences who never would have the ability to come hang out with Miss Avi, because they were like, "Who's Miss Avi? Who's this person?" So excited that you're going to be here with us and sharing us your awesome wisdom. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, let's share with the audience a little bit about who you are, how you got started, and just share what your path is with everyone.
oh gosh. This one's always one of those, like, where do you pick up the thread and begin with that? So just like basic background information about me. I grew up in a very religious household. Um,
Mhm.
my family was very, very Christian, very fundamentalist.
Yep.
But my mother's people, her father was in a Pentecostal church.
Mhm.
And so I kind of grew up interacting with the people down in Alabama who were part of that church. And it was a really interesting environment because it was actually, now that I'm older, I can appreciate it was a very diverse church, especially for Alabama.
Correct.
It was black, white, Hispanic. It was very mixed. And because of that, I grew up around the women in the church who were the prayer warriors and the mamas and the spiritual mothers. And
Mhm.
down there, hoodoo just goes hand in glove with that. Like it's you. This is the same person that's going to bring the casserole to the potluck and going to show up and help you when you have a baby, and also going to teach you a little bit of hoodoo to keep your boyfriend under control. And just it just kind of like
Yeah.
rolls into the whole thing. And so it was just kind of like hoodoo was background information for me. And it
Mhm.
didn't really come forward in my life until later on. But
Mhm.
it's amazing how much you actually absorb when you're not even really trying to. You're just having conversations with people and you sit with those and then you talk.
Mhm.
And that was really where my background came from.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah.
I was lived in Alabama. Well, I lived my informative years, or formative years, I mean, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Then moved to Alabama. So I lived in between most of my life between Chattanooga, Tennessee, or in Alabama. So I know exactly what you mean by Alabama. I mean, if you were not Christian, which I mean, I'm not Christian. I was Christian for a very long time and left. But some people still have a stigma about stuff that's very like hoodoo or voodoo, or like paganism, and some of that stuff you could never ever do out in public
Yes.
or be a part of. So did you experience that too, or was your church pretty much open to that?
It was, I think it was an open secret. It was kind of like, first of all, I think the men folk were largely oblivious, which is, and I would love to at some point participate in or see a hoodoo for men, because there's a whole branch of hoodoo that's very dedicated to folk and the divine masculine, and that one has been largely lost. But what would happen with the women of the church was it kind of everybody knew there were certain people you went to if you needed a problem fixed. And it just had that sort of, we don't put this out in the open, we don't discuss this publicly, but you know, a friend of a friend knows to tell you to go to Mama so and so and she can fix you up. And so it was always that kind of a vibe. And I think also, interestingly enough, I can remember sermons from when I was little advising young men to be cautious about the women involved with. And I actually remember a sermon being cautious about eating food.
Yeah, spaghetti.
And that she might be in your heart and ensnaring you against the will of the Lord. So there was some knowledge on the menfolk side too, that there was going on with the ladies. So, but yeah, it was never a secret, but it was definitely kind of a closed society thing.
Right. Yeah. I remember it was a big thing where you're like, you can't eat everybody's spaghetti because they might root you or that kind of thing, right? And I was, because I was I didn't know anything about that hoodoo and folk magic stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about, eating somebody's spaghetti? Then they had to school me on it. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And it's very rooted in like Appalachian kind of folk magic.
Yep.
So, I mean, you lived it.
Oh, yeah. And all kinds of things. Like, I remember at one point I went out on a date with a gentleman, and he came back to my house, and honestly, I had gone on a first date with this. I had no hoodoo designs on him, but I also had a ward, just salt, across my door, and a couple other things. And he saw those, and he excused himself, and I never heard from him again. So it was funny because he was a nice fella, but he wasn't for me anyway. So, he was in no danger, but there's always that. But people know, and I think it's interesting, like the more that they know, the less worried they are.
Correct. Yeah, because I remember when I was single, and I used to be a serial dater before I met Blair, my partner. And I was very much happy being single. I was like dating all the time, right? And they were all cool, and then they would come back to your lair, or they call it your lair, and you're like, yeah, exactly. And they see all the witchy stuff, the dust, the bottles, not dust like in dust bunnies, but like brick dust or sage or salt, and the idols, and they're like, what the hell is this? And coming from a very deep Christian society where we're at, they're just like, I'm out. If you don't have Jesus on the wall, and what is this pagan? What is, and it scares them, but it's kind of fun to watch them kind of run. And you're like, nah, if you can't deal with my decor, you sure as hell can't deal with me personally. If the sage and salt and scares you, then wait till you just can't.
What did they say? If you don't want to come around my house because the sage smoke, that means it's working.
Exactly. And that's another thing. You can ward your house too much sometimes, right? Because you're like, I just want all the positive people in, and then you just ward it too much, and like nobody comes visit you. You're like, maybe I should pull back a little bit on some of those wards. So, but it's very fascinating, especially living in the South. So I'm sure you have some amazing, amazing, funny stories to share for sure. So you're talking about hoodoo was always in your family. So were you under a mentor, or how did you actually come into teaching hoodoo?
That is such a good question, and to this day, I'm not sure I know the answer. So what happened for me was I had one of those no good, terrible, very bad years where it was just like someone had decided I was just going to get all my lifetime suffering in like within a 7-day period.
Yeah.
And during that 7-day period, I found out that my mother had a cancer scare. My father was going to have major surgery. My grandfather had a stroke. My fiance left me for another woman. And I lost my job and wound up becoming a stripper. Now, I love and support sex workers, dancers, all of that. But I wound up in that industry not because I wanted to be there, but because I needed to not starve to death.
Correct.
And so it was awful. It was so bad. And it really, when you have that much catastrophe and so much of it seeming to relate back to the loss of the relationship, and it all just kind of happens at once, you really start questioning, like, what am I doing incorrectly? Like, somehow I am screwing up here. And that was when I got back in touch with some family friends, and I pulled out some of the things that I had been taught. And there were 2 ladies in particular. One of them is now passed. They were really instrumental in just kind of guiding me through and giving me advice. And as I was starting to learn these things, I realized that at that time, 4 or 5 years ago now, there was actually very little publicly available information.
Yeah.
And although some of the stuff that had been put out by Lucky Mojo, some of it is better quality than others, in my opinion. But the problem I always had with their stuff was it was so badly organized. Like the index was just confusing, and like, so I thought, you know, I'm learning this stuff, I'm practicing this stuff, I'm seeing it work, I'm starting to do it for friends and family. I can stick this on YouTube. Because surely there's somebody who's in my position thinking, why is my life falling apart? And so I started doing that, and I started just answering questions in groups, not because I'm a guru or anything, but because I knew the answer. You know, I'm just trying to be helpful. And it kind of blew up because there wasn't any other real large source at that time. So if you had told me 6 years ago that I was going to be teaching and practicing hoodoo full time, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. Like it was a very big surprise to me as a life path.
Yeah. It's interesting though that like the universe throws everything at you so you can deal with it all at one time because they have bigger plans for you. And you're like, we're just going to catapult you and just give all this crap to you.
Out of the way in this.
Because we need you here now. All right, you need to start doing this for other people now. And I agree with that. When I started looking into, I started off Wiccan, and then I left that path, and now I'm more eclectic. So I do bring in a lot of like hoodoo stuff, and I'm very situational magic. Right? Whatever I feel I need to do that I bring. But when I was researching it, there was nothing out there at all. Nothing. And I started way back in the day when, it was pre-internet. So when you just had that one Lucky Mojo magazine or book or catalog, whatever it was at that time, they didn't have YouTube. This kind of practice, and I'm so glad that you're here sharing it with us with the event, is still hidden in secret. Some of the folks that are practicing don't want to give up their secrets to everybody because they hold that really tight. And I totally understand that. So when we talk about the practices of hoodoo, people are really intrigued with it because they don't see it. It's not out there as much for the masses like Wicca is.
Yes.
So I'm super excited. And
Wicca has had the advantage of having like a much more fantastic PR team than most other paths.
Exactly.
And that, that does, it makes it more widely available and something that people are more familiar with. But I think one of the things that is personally frustrating to me as a practitioner about the secrecy surrounding hoodoo, I do understand where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah.
But the power of it's really not about knowing that you can put sugar and a name in a jar. It is about understanding that there is a spirit attached to each one of those things and how to build a relationship with those things. And like you can put the formulas out there And it doesn't do anybody a bit of good if they don't have their own vibe with spirit. So I oftentimes feel like the people who want to keep things all secret with hoodoo are kind of forgetting that.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true. I know that in my classes, with my academy, my students, I bitch about them to them all the time that the magic is within you. You can, like you said, you can put the sugar in the jar and, the honey or the rose petals or whatever you want to do. But until you actually work and you do the magic yourself and you feel what the energy feels like when you are casting that spell and when you are saying your prayers over your candle and you're activating that and you know how the energy feels with your hands and you actually do it, you're not going to be able to change your life. Really, magic is about changing a situation in your life. Really.
Hallelujah, preach, sister. Like,
and taking control back of your life and changing the circumstances. But, and, I have issues sometimes because I'm old school and I'm like, man, when we studied, we had to study hard, right? We had a mentor and we couldn't find our stuff on Instagram and stuff. But now we have all these people who are on Instagram and Instagram witches. And I have because I want to bring all this to light, but then I'm guarded with my craft too. But then I was talking to one of my circle sisters and she was like, yeah, but they'll never know the magic unless they do it, unless it's in their heart, unless they have the divine connection with their ancestors and with the god and goddesses, so I'm like, yeah, okay, I can get on board with that.
yes.
So it's this is very powerful magic and very intimate because you are asking the divine to help you in manifesting what you want. It's a relationship.
Yeah, and that manifesting what you want is so key to. That's one of the reasons I love hoodoo. Like, with all my heart, I really love the path because it is so honest.
You're talking about hoodoo and how that's your favorite kind of magic, right? The hoodoo.
Yes, well, because you had mentioned that it's intimate, like doing magic is a very intimate process, and I feel like a lot of the paths, they often require sort of this backwards justification of what you want to do. Where you have to like say, okay, well, here's what I want. Let me go through this series of steps to pitch a case to the divine about why I should get what I want. And hoodoo requires more, really, it requires just blatant honesty. Like, hoodoo does not actually care, and the spirits you're working with for the most part don't actually care if you just want to control someone because you're a control freak.
Yeah.
They're not going to judge you about that, but you do have to be honest that that's what's going on. And so I feel like in a certain way, it really does actually make us look at ourselves more and improve. And for me personally, like I have found that one of the biggest things for me when I started practicing largely because I wanted to not have my life be absolute chaos, and because I wanted to force the person who had left me to leave the person that she left me for, to come back to me and to fix everything, like to be a better human. And in the process of learning the art, one of the things that I discovered was that I had really bad issues with control. I had bad issues with jealousy. I had bad issues with possessiveness. I had bad issues with insecurity. I had really, really bad issues with getting hyper-focused on myself and what I wanted and not paying attention to anybody else's needs. And as I started to be honest about those things, first of all, my magic got more powerful, but second of all, my desires started to change. And what I found was that by the time I got to the place that I could control anyone that I chose, I no longer wanted to.
Exactly.
And it's kind of a weird place because like you get that honesty and that puts you in a seat of power. And that is what I appreciate so much about hoodoo, is it will really kind of hold your feet to the fire about being truthful, but it will also allow you to experience the consequences of your truth and not punish you or judge you in any way for it, and just allow you as a human and rely on the goodness of yourself as a human to adjust.
Yeah. And, we talk about magic too, and being a pagan and a witch, and how everything, it looks all great and wonderful and fun, and everybody wants to light the black candle kind of thing. But especially with when you get into magic, it's really about self-empowerment, but it will show you your mirror image of your shadow self. And the stuff that you need to really work on. It's not all fluffy bunny and incense and sage and crystals. Hoodoo will tell you exactly who you are, what your shadows are, and what you need.
Yes, you're gonna get to meet that lady, and she may be a royal bitch.
Exactly. And it's not that hoodoo's and magic is like you have to get rid of that person because that's who you are. But you have to learn how to, what I call, dance with your demons. And you have to learn how to embrace that shadow side, because everybody can be a bitch, right? Everybody can be that petty mean girl, or that jealous person, that control freak. But you recognize it more when you work with hoodoo, when you work in your magic. You're like, yeah, I'm that person sometimes. Not proud of it, but I recognize that I have those negative tendencies, and I'm cool with that.
Yep. That's for real.
I love it. So who are you kind of crushing on as far as like your witchy or kind of path, or your hoodoo kind of books, or who are you like, I really like this person?
Oh gosh, see, you asked me this question in the interview questions, and I felt so bad because I was like, I'm so busy all the time that I feel like I don't have time to actually sit down and read. And like I've got a stack of books actually. Like there's like a new release in the hoodoo or conjure community. I'm like, oh, add that to my Amazon list, and I got to buy that. And unfortunately, because of my work schedule, I wind up with just this ever-growing stack of books.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that the two things that I am just really thrilled with right now, I've been working, a lot of different people are really focused on finances right now with some of the things going on in the world. And what's fascinating to me is I'm seeing a bigger and bigger emphasis on thriving rather than just surviving in the money work that people want done, or that they want advice on how to do. So I've really been enjoying the Diva Drip oil by Conjured Cardia. That one, yes, fantastic stuff. And I feel like that one, for me, when I use it personally or when I use it for a client, and what people report back to me when they buy it, it really goes to that thriving level. Like it helps you to get past the here's just enough, and gives you some extra and kind of boosts you over that edge. So I really like that. And I also really love, from Inexplicable Things, their Unobstructed Love oil. They've had that for a while, but as especially with the sort of the situation on planet Earth right now, people have been also focusing on, okay, I want to get this relationship locked down. Like I want to have the stability here, and I want to invest. I feel like that has been really helping to clear a lot of mental and emotional blocks, as well as practical ones. So it seems like it's really helping people to get clear on what they want, to move forward in relationships, to get rid of, like, to bring up trauma. That oil is legendary with me for bringing up traumas and forcing them to be healed. Like, oh, he's gonna not commit well because this and this and this and this happened when he was little, and he's gonna have to deal with that, and he's just gonna be a weepy mess for a couple of weeks, and you're gonna have to support him, but then he will be ready to get married. So, like, I love that oil, and I definitely recommend those. Those are kind of my big, like, crushes right now. But like I said, I've got a huge stack of books, so I'll probably have to post about that at some point, if and when I have to read.
Awesome. So do you do workings for other people? Do you have clients, or you just teach classes?
I do workings. That I am at this point a little selective about what I will and won't take. Because I really am a big believer in people should try it themselves.
Oh yeah, it's their own personal magic. Yeah.
and they should invest that in themselves. But I also know that there are situations that are just a little more complex.
Mhm.
Having somebody who's been around the block a couple of times who's like, oh, this is what that is,
Yeah.
can be helpful. So at the moment, I primarily take extremely complicated love situations and or extremely complicated financial situations.
Mhm.
But
And work on those.
that's kind of the majority of where I'm at. And
Yeah.
actually, at this point, I think most of my clients come from referrals. So.
Yeah. And none of this, can you make him come back to me or leave his wife stuff?
Oh, I do get those. I do. Occasionally, I do some work on that. But I've also found that about 99% of the time, if it's just a case of, hey, can you make him come back, or hey, can you make me?
Simple.
I can be like, hey, here's a video, here's the products, go put it together yourself. And then a couple of weeks, I get a message, it's like, he's calling me, this is great. We're all like, rocket, like I love it.
You have the power. It's like the whole, what is that? In Wizard of Oz, when she tells Dorothy, the power has always been within you, or you've always had the power or something. So that's true. So tell us a little bit about the class that you're going to be teaching in the Witches Gathering.
I am actually really excited about this one because I was trying to put this together as like a video series or a class or something, and I wasn't quite sure what the best outlet was. And then you messaged me, and I was like, this is perfect. But I want to do a class on how to do a basic hoodoo spell that works. And what I want to discuss is the basic principles of hoodoo, including the ideas of what I call the sweet, sour, hot, cold access, and the idea of I think you would technically call it basic animism, that there is a spirit in everything you work with, and the basic principles of petition and of working and prayer. And the goal is that somebody who has never heard of hoodoo, knows nothing about it, can take that class and pick it up and go home and create a spell that's appropriate for their situation. And somebody who is advanced can say, oh, here is why I do the things that I do. And once you know that why, it enables you to get much more creative. And so I think for kind of all levels, it'll provide like a good foundational basis to refer back to. I mean, just as an example, one of the things that people will often talk about is a honey jar or a sugar jar. And so the question becomes, why does that work? Like, it's sweetening. And say, well, why does honey move slower than sugar? Well, because sugar is hot and honey is cold. And so there's all these explanations for it. And once you know the principles, then you can start choosing. It's like, well, maybe I want to do both a sugar jar and a honey jar on this person, because this on the sugar jar, I'm going to turn that into a shaker because I just want to have some fun and kind of get the romance going. But I'm also going to do a honey jar because I see this person as long-term potential, and I want to start growing and nurturing something on the long term. So just some examples like that is kind of what we're going to do.
Exactly. I did my shaker jar from your video, from one of your things. And I absolutely adore shaker jars. And I've done some honey jars and some sugar jars too. But I love shaker jars.
It was one of those things I couldn't understand why. Like it was a basic thing. I learned that so early, but it was not on YouTube. It wasn't in any of the books. And I was like, how did this not get out there? But I love
it. Every morning when I open my computer, I do my oils, and then I take my jars and my shaker jar and put it on there. And then I also take, when I'm bending, I also take that shaker jar with me because it's very portable. And I move that energy around my entire table, and I draw in my customers with my shaker jar. And I freaking love it. I love it. And it's so powerful. It's been so successful for me. I love it.
Wonderful.
I love it. It's awesome. So, all right. So I'm so excited that you're going to be teaching that class. I know that it's going to be loved by everyone, and because everybody loves hands-on, and they're like, oh, I can take this class. I can go put something together that day, and actually get into their magic. So I'm super excited that you're going to be teaching that class. People are going to love that class for sure.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really
lots of information. So thank you for being here. We're so glad that you're going to be part of the Witches Gathering online event November 6th through the 8th. Tickets are available now. So the description is in the banner that is scrolling. That is a link, and I'll put the description in the description box. All right. All right, Ms. Avi, thanks for hanging out with us. And we will see you.
I will see you guys in November.
Yep, November. Witch on, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye.